Welcome to IVF This, episode 72, The Importance of Advocacy with Resolve's Ryan.
Welcome to IVF This. I'm your host, Emily Ginn. I'm a mother to two beautiful and feral boys. I'm married to my favorite person in the world. I'm a social worker, a life coach, and an IVF warrior. I'm here to teach you how to manage your mind and emotions during your IVF journey, to break free from anxiety and regain control of your life, even in the midst of infertility. I'm going to teach you to say IVF this to how we think about, talk about, and experience infertility. Let's go.
Hello, my beautiful friends. I hope you're doing amazing. I am delighted to have the guest on the show that I have today. His name is Ryan. He's a volunteer with Resolve, which is a national infertility awareness volunteer organization in the United States. Now, we're going to be covering two very important topics. The first topic is National Infertility Awareness Week, which this year it is April 25th through the 29th of 2022. Now, the episode drops the week before, just in case you want to have more information or you want to reach out, how you can get involved. And then the second part of the episode, we're going to be talking about the National Advocacy Day that is run by Resolve. Resolve founded both of these events, both National Infertility Awareness Week and Advocacy Day. And Advocacy Day is an opportunity to speak directly with lawmakers about some pieces of legislation that impact fertility directly. So Ryan will go through all of those. I'm so excited to share this information with you. Advocacy Day is May 18th, 2022. Registration is going to close, I believe, on May 2nd, 2022. So you can go to resolve.org and find out all of the information for both National Infertility Awareness Week and National Advocacy Day. So I hope you enjoy what I have for you. Have a great day. Hello, Ryan. I want to start out, before you get started, that you have the distinct, well, I think it's the distinct honor of being the first man on the podcast. Not even my husband has been a guest.
What? Amazing.
Yes. So, but don't worry, audience. Vance will make an appearance on the podcast probably around episode 100. So you will hear from the hubby at some point. But today is all about Ryan and Resolve and the week that's coming. It is April 22nd, 2022. Is that what starts the week, National Infertility Awareness Week?
It is April 25th through the 29th.
You know, I'm really good at math, so I was absolutely accounting for that 22nd to be a Monday. So April 25th through the 29th, Infertility Awareness Week. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So before we get started, Ryan, I want you to tell us a little bit about your journey, your infertility journey with your wife, as well as what led you to Resolve.
Love to. First of all, thank you so much for having me, Emily. It's an honor to be with you. My infertility story is going to be very common, or it's not going to be news to your audience. It's a very common story, but I always find that the most common infertility stories have some unique twist or nuance that someone might benefit from understanding. My wife and I, Lindsay, we immediately tried to start having a family. We tried naturally. Endocrinologists tell us when we should be trying naturally, which is super romantic, by the way. A year or two after trying, physicians were telling us to do so naturally, we ended up seeking treatment at a fertility clinic in Chicago. We did 3 cycles of IVF in 2015. We didn't really have the success that we were hoping for. We ended up having 1 genetically normal embryo each time, but our fertility doctor here in Chicago had little confidence that we should be transferring any of those to Lindsay. In fact, we never even tried a transfer. That was when our physician recommended that we start thinking about other ways to have a family. Egg donation, adoption. Egg donation was something that we learned at that time was an incredible gift that many families are really lucky to have. But we just weren't there yet. And at the time, we just weren't ready to have the conversations about donor gametes or adoption. So we asked our Chicago physician if we should get a second opinion. He said, yes, you should. And so we went to a clinic in Colorado. We ended up doing 2 cycles of IVF there. We did have success. We were able to create 7 normal embryos, but that clinic confirmed what the first clinic told us as well, which was that my wife wasn't going to be able to carry. And so at the same time that we were pursuing the creation of embryos in Colorado, we were also trying to identify a surrogate at the same time. Through an agency here in Chicago, we did identify a surrogate. It feels odd to just refer to her as a surrogate because she's become part of our family now. Stacy's kind of like a sister to me. Stacy carried my son, Eddie, who was born in 2017, and my daughter, Josie, who just turned 1 in March of 2022. So we have 2 children as the result of assisted reproduction, collaborative reproduction, and none of this would have been possible without advancements in science and all of the advocacy that has happened along the way to make this possible.
You know, one of my favorite parts about your story in particular, because this is not the first time that you and I have spoken and we've both shared our stories with each other, is that now that we're on the other side of it, kind of both of us are on the other side of this journey. We do have the happy stories, but it's not an invalidation or a minimization of the struggle that you and Lindsay had to come to terms with, you know, some of these massive choices to go out of state to pursue a second opinion is not an option that a lot of people have. To be told, you know, yes, you can make embryos, but I'm so sorry, your body will reject them. Like, that will not work. My heart is certainly with Lindsay at that time, kind of being told that information, because there are a lot of us out there that are told that. It's almost a strike to your womanhood, to your femininity. I don't know if that was something that Lindsay struggled with. It's certainly something that I've spoken to my clients about, because, you know, we have this like internalized misogyny that this is the only thing that we're supposed to be able to do is, you know, make and grow babies. I do love that, always hearing people's stories, because you're right. There are parts that are definitely familiar, right? All of us can kind of understand, and all of us can at least empathize and access what it would feel like in that time. But everybody has their own little special sauce on top of their journey. So thank you for telling that. And I also love the term collaborative fertility. I have not experienced surrogacy, so that's not necessarily a phrase in my lexicon, but I love that you used it, because that's very much the experience. It is a collaborative process. Even though I've never done surrogacy, my reproductive endocrinologist calls it the ultimate group project, because it is, right? Without her, I would not have 2 of my children. So thank you very much for sharing that. Now, you mentioned advocacy, which is a beautiful segue to what we're talking about. So how did you find Resolve? What is Resolve? Tell us a little bit about that part of your journey.
Yeah, so I just do want to comment on a couple of things that you just mentioned, actually, because I think it's important that the common thread that I mentioned at the very beginning is something that these conversations really should emphasize, is that we did have success ultimately. We have the family that we always dreamed that we would have, right? Down to the names that we thought about the first year we were dating, if you can believe that. It is extremely lonely. Very isolating. The one thing that I always say to people, and they react, there's always a reaction to this when I tell them, there was a lot of sadness in our home. When we were going through this, there was an incredible amount of sadness. And it just felt like the same day was repeating itself over and over again with every failure and every disappointment. In fact, I tell this story all the time. My wife would call me, Lindsay would call me when she would get results from the clinic, and it would be the same message every time when she said it to me. Her interpretation of the results, all of the testing that had been done, was the same 3 words. It didn't work, right? She said it to me every time. It didn't work. That always was, you know, I was always bracing myself for those results. And it's important for people to understand that this is, it may feel isolating and it may feel lonely, but there are so many people that are experiencing the same thing, and there are communities that can help people get through it, which is a good segue, right? By the way, collaborative reproduction, I'm a surrogacy attorney too. We probably didn't mention that at the beginning.
Yes.
So that's
I'm so glad you did. Glad you did. Yes. Please talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So my wife and I were going through this. I tell people I was a boring tax attorney at the time. I was doing a lot of traveling, but as we were going through this, I poured myself into it and just tried to educate myself on the laws of surrogacy and all the things that I needed to know to be able to pursue this as the way to help us grow our family. And that's a common term that's used among surrogacy attorneys. And that's what I ended up doing. I ended up transitioning my career into helping surrogates, helping intended parents, recipient parents in donation arrangements, and donors themselves. It's a very common thing to refer to it as collaborative reproduction instead of, third-party reproduction, which is also a very common term to use. Collaborative reproduction is just my choice of words.
Well, it feels nicer than third party. Let's be honest.
Sure,
It feels a little bit more communal.
There's a lot of expressions that are used to describe surrogacy. My bun, their oven, or their bun, my oven, whatever it may be, right? Amidst all of this, not only was there a transition of my career, but there was also, we were trying to gather as much information as we possibly could, right? And one of the really great resources for us was Resolve. I mean, because everywhere you turn, if you do a simple search, you end up at Resolve every time, right? Whether you're talking about IVF or infertility or advocacy for coverage or insurance coverage in general, there's plenty of discussions that are in the Resolve universe that help couples and individuals like Lindsay and I get through what we thought was the loneliest thing that we could ever do together. Right? Couples like us, individuals like us, they're afraid to share these stories. It's hard, right? It's really hard because whoever's listening to you is very unlikely to understand, right? Despite how common it is for individuals and couples to experience infertility, 1 in 8, by the way, you're probably going to hear me say that more often than not today, but 1 in 8 couples experience infertility. So it may feel lonely, but by the time you tell somebody, I promise you that there are going to be many instances like there were for Lindsay and I, where whoever you're talking to will say, yeah, us too, right? They're going to say, yeah, that happened to us, right? Or we're going through that right now, but we were afraid to tell people. And that's okay, right? It's okay to not want to share the story, but there are a lot of people who do want to share it because it can benefit others. So you asked a question about Resolve. Like I said, we turned to Resolve for information. We wanted to understand, first of all, how are we going to pay for all this, right? It is an enormous financial burden for anyone undergoing this. And we were very, very lucky. At the time, my wife and I had insurance provided by our employers that gave us sort of a head start on paying for some of the procedures that we needed to undergo at the fertility clinics. That was a significant resource, but it was obviously a fraction of what we had to exhaust in order to be able to pursue not just IVF, but also surrogacy to have our family. Okay. And so Resolve helped us, right? We called them, we asked them, they provided answers to us. And that's when I started to learn about Resolve.
And it's resolve.org for anyone who's interested, a United States-based advocacy group. I think they're based in McLean, Virginia.
Correct.
Okay. Which is hilarious because before I transitioned to IVF coaching, I lived literally down the street. Even though I was already in an infertility journey for like 6 years, I didn't know who Resolve was. It's a fantastic resource, and some would say like a hidden gem for the infertility community. But it's resolve.org, the National Infertility Association. That is what we're talking about. So what year did National Infertility Awareness Week start?
1989.
Oh my gosh. I will not age myself, but I was already alive at that point. Don't ask me any other questions, folks. Nobody. So 1989, National Infertility Awareness Week started. Tell me, what is the significance? What is the importance of National Infertility Awareness Week? And it's always around the same time of year.
Correct. It's always the end of April.
Okay.
Started by Resolve. We're going to get into a lot of the details here, but I personally view it as an opportunity more than anything else for the infertility community. It's the opportunity. Okay. The mission is right there in the name. to raise awareness, right, about a disease that affects 1 in 8 couples. But I've always thought about it as something much more meaningful than just raising that awareness. Infertility has historically, we've touched on this, historically been a difficult conversation to have because there are myths and misunderstandings about the issue. And on top of all of that, here comes again that overwhelming sense of isolation when it comes to infertility. So the week itself has been designated as the time for the infertility community to share their stories about infertility. This is the opportunity. The willingness to share, we've seen, enhances the public understanding of the disease, right? Provide information about ways to seek treatment. You'll, more than anything else, see an education of the public and lawmakers, which we'll get to later, I'm sure, about how infertility impacts your neighbors, your friends. And I'm looking at you, federal and state legislators, your constituents. 1 in 8 of your constituents are suffering from infertility and they need your help. Okay. All of us who have experienced infertility, regardless the impact on your ability to grow a family, every single one of us has a story to share. And our collective impact during National Infertility Awareness Week can really change policies and the minds of legislators.
I love it so much. And I should have asked you this earlier. You're a volunteer with Resolve, but you have a very specific role.
That's right. Okay. So going back to the infertility experience itself, after everything that Resolve had done for us, which was, if nothing else, it was an education of what we're supposed to do. We also raised our hands and said, how do we help you? How do we volunteer? How do we help other people that are going through this experience? And so I, like hundreds of others, am a volunteer for Resolve. When Lindsay and I experienced infertility, we wanted to find ways that we could lift up the infertility community, lift up our neighbors and friends in ways that they did for us during our own odyssey to parenthood. We walked in the Chicagoland Walks of Hope, which is a gathering of the infertility community to raise awareness. We made donations whenever we could. 5 years ago, I volunteered to participate in Federal Advocacy Day in Washington, D.C., which is a gathering of advocates who go to Capitol Hill, speak to members of Congress about infertility and why we need their help. The next year, I was on the volunteer committee that helped plan Advocacy Day. The next year, I led a subcommittee on the volunteer committee. And this year, I, along with my friend Lisa Rosenthal, who is a patient advocate in Connecticut, we are the co-chairs of Advocacy Day volunteer committee for 2022 and 2023.
Beautiful. So we're gonna get to Advocacy Day, I promise. When this episode drops, it will be exactly 1 week before the start of National Infertility Awareness Week. So I want to talk about a couple of specific things about National Infertility Awareness Week so that we have a little bit of a jump if people want to get involved. So there is a specific 5-day challenge that occurs during National Infertility Awareness Week. I have participated in years past, but I would love to hear from your mouth. What are the 5 challenges throughout the week so that people can feel involved? This sense of community, the sense of advocacy, the sense of sharing our story can be, we're just gonna turn the whole world orange, right? That's our color. So
that's right. Emily, this is the part that I love. Let's get to it. 5-day challenge. You ready?
Do it.
The 5-day challenge for National Infertility Awareness Week is the mechanism by which we as a community raise awareness during National Infertility Awareness Week. You may hear the acronym bounced around an awful lot, NIAW. I may even use it here to keep it brief. We encourage anyone who is willing to share their stories. You are not on an island here. You will see hundreds, thousands of different stories, photos, reels, clips, videos being shared online every day of National Infertility Awareness Week. Each of the 5 days has a theme, a different hashtag. So if you'll indulge me,
Absolutely.
Number 1, on day 1, hashtag this is my story. We encourage advocates, infertility patients, the community at large to post using the hashtag this is my story. about the unique struggle that you faced. Is the struggle the treatment? Is the struggle the decisions you faced, the outcome? Or is it the very access to treatment that stood in your way? Mm-hmm. Share that story. I promise that someone will identify with your experience and someone will benefit from your willingness to share it. Okay?
100%.
Day 2, hashtag we can all. We can all. We want to hear ideas from the community about ways to advance the movement. Okay? Too often, Emily, we hear from those who may not understand infertility that we should just try to relax, or that we should just adopt, or just do this. Instead, let's let the infertility community and the allies give the advice this time, using the hashtag we can all. Okay? We can all change the status quo. Status quo is unacceptable, right? Mm-hmm. Together, we can all change minds. Together, we can all convince decision makers in the United States Congress that we must tear down the barriers to treatment. Okay? No one person can convince the United States Congress that infertility coverage is inadequate. Mm-hmm. But together, I've seen minds change in the middle of meetings with a United States congressperson. I've seen it happen. It's a very powerful moment, and it's something that we can all accomplish together. Okay?
Absolutely.
Day 3, to your point about wearing orange, let's wear some orange. Hashtag wear orange. We want everyone to rock their orange to raise awareness for NIAW. Why orange? There are many different reasons. The color itself kind of promotes a sense of wellness, compassion, warmth. Mm-hmm. It also reinforces the idea of community and reminds every infertility patient that they are not alone. Day 4, hashtag infertility is. Okay. This one is going to differ for every individual and every couple. Okay. On day 4, we want everyone to share a picture of what infertility means to them. Doesn't have to be a picture, it can be in the form of words, but we encourage pictures about what infertility is. Okay. This one came naturally for me, just as an example. For me, there's a photo that I took of my wife, Lindsay, in the delivery room as our surrogate was giving birth to our first child, our son, Eddie. I, of course, was above the shoulders. Lindsay was watching it all happen. And as I took the picture and as I've looked at it over time, there's this light and there's Lindsay and all of the shots and the treatments and all of the emotions that we experienced together were captured in this one photo as Lindsay saw Eddie take his first breath. That was infertility to me. Mm-hmm. Okay. Finally, day 5, hashtag I am behind the swirl, that beautiful Resolve logo. Okay. Mm-hmm. And this is my personal springboard to Advocacy Day. Okay. Which is in May. Okay. This is where I tell my friends and colleagues and anyone who will listen, this is how I support my community. I am behind the swirl by supporting my community. This is how I am behind that beautiful Resolve logo. I am going to sit down with members of Congress and their staff, and I'm going to convince them that they must change the status quo. They must support legislation that affects 1 in 8 of their constituents. Now, there's a lot of information about National Infertility Awareness Week. That's a very high-level summary, but that gives you an idea of what the approach is.
And I want to add for Orange Day, day number 3, we wear orange, or we are orange. There is merch on resolve.org. If you want to get specific shirts that have taglines, there's no toll that's required. It can literally be whatever orange garment you have, but it's just important to show that color, that just like epilepsy awareness or breast cancer awareness, there are signature colors that are associated, and it builds a sense of community. So I wanted to make sure that people know that they can buy specific things, or they can just wear. I think last year I just found an orange dress that I had and I wore it because it escaped me to purchase that beforehand. So, okay, that is the 5-day challenge. And again, this podcast will be released a week before. We wanted to use this episode as a springboard to let you guys have an opportunity to engage. So how can we get involved? Let's say you're listening to this on April 18th, the day it's released. We have a week until NIAW. Is there a way to still get involved?
Yes, there is. There certainly is. There are many small and big ways to get involved that are free. They're easy. My first recommendation is to visit infertilityawareness.org. Okay, that's the website that houses all of the National Infertility Awareness Week information. Okay, if you click on the Get Involved tab, you can find all the ways to get involved, whether it's through social media, organizing a walk to raise awareness, which is not the expectation, but that would be great, or just sharing your story, ways to share your story and sort of the themes for each of the days within National Infertility Awareness Week. Okay, there's also a toolkit on that website that anyone can download with all the tools and guidance on making an impact during NIAW.
Perfect. Okay, so this was such a great introduction to National Infertility Awareness Week, and I hope next year we're going to have a little bit more to go through. I'm going to have you back on the podcast, number one, for Advocacy Day, because we're about to talk about it, for that May Day occurrence. Our fundamental goal is always the same. We're creating awareness. We're creating voices for those who might not feel, number one, it's a little bit of a taboo subject, not because it is taboo, but just because there is a social stigma on it. And so the more we talk about our stories, the more we share our stories, the more that there is an opportunity for people to feel less alone, which, as you mentioned, and as probably every single woman that I have ever coached, every single person that I have ever spoken with, the loneliness is one of the most significant emotions that they experience. So we want to make sure that we identify that. So kind of in summary, National Infertility Awareness Week, April 25th through the 29th. There's a 5-day challenge. You can follow Resolve on Instagram. You can follow them on Facebook, TikTok, everywhere. Go to resolve.org just for general information about Resolve. For the actual National Infertility Awareness Week, it's infertilityawareness.org. That's the repository for all of that beautiful information. Is there anything you would like to say kind of in closing for National Infertility Awareness Week?
Download the toolkit, familiarize yourself with the ways to make an impact during National Infertility Awareness Week. I promise you will feel empowered. I promise you will want to do more, which is the way I personally view National Infertility Awareness Week, which is as a springboard to Federal Advocacy Day, where we can really go out and change the world.
Hey guys, I hope you really enjoyed that segment on National Infertility Awareness Week. It's one of my favorite weeks of the year. But now this is where we talk about Advocacy Day. Advocacy Day is foundational to Resolve's mission, which is to expand the impact of infertility awareness to legislatures. So Ryan's going to talk a little bit about some of the pieces of legislation we have coming up and how you can get involved as an advocate for Advocacy Day. I hope you enjoy this. Have a good day. We are talking about your favorite thing, I know for sure, which is Advocacy Day. So Ryan, remind me again, when is Federal Advocacy Day?
Advocacy Day this year is May 18th, 2022.
So that gives you guys about 2 weeks, because registration for Advocacy Day closes when?
It'll close at the beginning of May.
Okay. So May 2nd, which happens to be my birthday. So it's a fabulous day anyway. So that gives everyone who's listening 2 weeks to get registered for Advocacy Day.
I am the co-chair of Resolve's Advocacy Day, which is an annual event that traditionally had been an in-person event in Washington, D.C., where we sat down in the offices of U.S. senators and U.S. representatives to tell them about how they could support the infertility community by sponsoring bills and voting on bills that are brought to the floor. Resolve is a nonprofit organization. They focus on reproductive health, and they really do work tirelessly to ensure equal access to all family building options for men and women who are experiencing infertility. An important thing for your audience to know is that there is an enormous number of people that they represent or that they are advocating for, because 1 in 8 couples experiences infertility. Resolve has only 11 full-time staff. in the organization. That's it, 11 people. They rely on the commitment of volunteers to implement their really very ambitious ideas to advocate on behalf of the population experiencing barriers to infertility.
11.
11. And that's 11 is growth. I think that there was 8 full-time last year.
First of all, that's pretty exponential growth considering, but still not enough for what we're trying to do. I'm saying we as if I am also a volunteer of Resolve. I feel a sense of camaraderie here. Mm-hmm. There are 2 different levels of Advocacy Day, right? There's the national platforms for Advocacy Day, and then there's the state level platform. So can you talk just a couple of minutes about the difference between the 2 and what we're going for?
Of course. Yes, there are levels of advocacy. At the state level, there are advocates all across the country who are going into state houses and appealing to state legislators for access to coverage. The coverage at the state level is also woefully inadequate. I believe as of the time of this recording, there's only 19 states that have some coverage for IVF or infertility coverage at the state level. What we're primarily focused on May 18th is advocating at the federal level. We are meeting with United States senators, United States representatives to convince them that their constituents need their help. Okay, there are a number of bills that we educate the advocates on. Okay, you don't need to know really anything other than an infertility experience or infertility affected somebody that you love, that is important to you, and you want to go and ask our Congress people for help. Okay, every year Resolve partners with the American Society for Reproductive Medicine. So it's not just advocates, there are professionals, there are lawyers, there are doctors who come together to have these conversations about the need for increased access to family building options. Okay, this is a one-day virtual event. It's very simple. You will be part of a larger state delegation. You're going to do it from your home. Okay, there's no one goes to a meeting alone. You will be going with other advocates. There's at least an experienced advocate in every meeting. And here's the important thing. You don't need to share your story if you're not comfortable doing so. Your mere presence is a statement in itself. By being present, you are saying to members of Congress, this is unacceptable. We as a country have to do more to help those who suffer from infertility. I've seen members of Congress react to the numbers in a meeting and have their minds changed. And they say, I see that this is important to my constituents. Okay. Resolve does all the heavy lifting. They schedule all the meetings. They provide the education. They give you the information that you need to be able to tell your story. I simplify it for advocates all the time. I tell them, answer 2 questions in a meeting. This is my approach. It's worked for me. Maybe it doesn't work for others. Answer 2 questions. Why am I here? And how can you help me? Okay. Why am I here? Tell your story. How can you help me? Sponsor these bills. Okay. Now, as I mentioned in the past, we've gone to Washington and we've met as a state delegation. Meeting face to face with these decision makers is a remarkable experience. There's so much pride in this community, and you will feel so empowered after going through this experience. The impact of the event is going to make a change in people's lives, and you're going to feel that.
I love it so much. So, okay, what are a couple of the big pushes that we, again, sense of camaraderie, that Resolve is really pushing for this legislative session?
The actual bill numbers have not been exactly flushed out yet. We will have those very shortly. But generally, the goal is to attack the same issues until we have some success here. Number one, we want to make sure that anyone who receives healthcare through government-sponsored health plans has coverage for infertility. That's a big ask, right? But we're going to ask for it. Another issue is fertility preservation. Far too often, people are diagnosed with cancer, and that treatment jeopardizes their future ability to have a family. As an organization, we're trying to drive home to lawmakers that no one should have to choose between medical treatment of their conditions and the chance to be a parent, right? Or to have a family. Also, very, very important to secure permanent coverage of IVF for wounded veterans who've already sacrificed so much already, right? That sacrifice should not extend to their chance at having their own family. These bills are just waiting to be acted on by our federal elected officials that will permanently allow veterans with a service-connected injury causing infertility to have access to IVF medical treatments, okay? And then the last one, a big one, the John Lewis Every Child Deserves a Family Act has received an enormous amount of attention already, but it's always good to remind the legislators who are not among the 200 plus already co-sponsors of the bill that increases the number of foster and adoptive homes by banning discrimination against foster and adoptive parents based on sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, marital status, and religion. So those at a high level, those are the issues that we're going to be focused on.
So good. So good. Okay. So talk about registration. You've talked a little bit about like the responsibilities of the volunteers. Again, everybody, Resolve is doing all the heavy lifting. Your job is to show up.
Register and show up. We have a very ambitious goal. Okay. Here's the goal. We want an advocate who is registered to meet with every single member of Congress. Okay. All 435 districts. We want an advocate from every one of those districts. Are we going to get there? Don't know. Right. But that's the goal. Right. It wouldn't be a goal if it wasn't ambitious. I think,
absolutely.
Right? That's right. We at least want an advocate from all 50 states. Right. We at least want to get into every single Senate office to have a meeting. Remember, you're not going alone. You're not going to be without an experienced advocate. Someone will be there to drive the conversation. You are there to make your presence known or tell your story or make the ask, right? Do what you feel most comfortable doing, right? We want to get into the ear of every office, every staff member, every representative, and every senator that will listen, okay? And we can't get in those meetings unless we have a constituent from those meetings.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's the goal.
Okay.
You can register on resolve.org. And if you go to the Get Involved tab, you can select Advocacy Day, and there you will be able to register. It's free. It's just your time and your presence.
And how long on average do these meetings take?
They're quick. They are about 12 to 15 minutes long. They don't have all day to listen to us. And that's why part of the education process is tailoring those pitches into what many call the elevator pitch, right? We got to have those things narrowed down, and then we got to make sure that we make the ask, right? We need your help. We need you to support these bills. They are very brief meetings, but that's all part of the preparation going into Advocacy Day to make sure that all of the pitches are tailored to that very short time frame. Yes,
we're reviewing it one more time. We want an advocate. We want a volunteer for every congressional district. 435. That's our goal.
The goal.
15-ish minutes of your day on May
18th, 2022. I should clarify, it is a full day in the sense that we don't know when those meetings are going to be scheduled yet. And we won't know because the United States Congress is very busy until probably the day or 2 days before. Okay. And so they will give us those 15-minute windows, and that's when we know we need to be available.
But you will have that information before May 18th, like 1 or 2 days before.
That's correct. Every advocate will have a dashboard on a dedicated website that will tell you who you're meeting with, what the bills are, what the issues are, how long the meeting is, the number to call in, support lines. Everything will be done by Resolve to make sure that it can go as smoothly as possible.
Perfect. Okay. May 18th, you get involved, resolve.org, go to Get Involved, the tab it's a drop-down carrot tab for Get Involved, and you can register, and Resolve will take it from there. They will offer you all of that information. You can also access their website from any of their social media platforms. They have all the links, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all the things. So you can also access that. And I just want to reiterate, these are things, even if you are not a veteran, even if, one of these things is not really specific to you, this is about our community and creating more awareness. So I myself don't have any experience in, the military. They probably would have turned me away for sure, but that doesn't mean that I can't go advocate for people like me who have been in the military for those types of benefits. So I don't want you to think that maybe it's not 100% applicable. It's still available to you for that advocacy. We looked at the website and it's actually for events. So resolve.org events advocacy day. So
that's right. That's right. If you go to events on the resolve.org website and then click on advocacy day, that will take you to the registration page and you will be registered as part of your local state delegation for advocacy day.
So good. Thank you so much to talk about Resolve and all of the amazing things that you guys are doing. Again, get involved, share your story, the 5-day challenge, all of these things, advocacy day. This is our opportunity to share our story. We want to change the way people view infertility. We share our story. We want to change the way people react when you share an infertility story. We have to advocate for ourselves. We have to share our story. So I hope this was helpful to all of you. As soon as I finish with Ryan, I am going to be registering for Advocacy Day because I will be available that day. Last year I was in the hospital, so that put a little bit of a speed bump on there, but we got this. Thank you so much for being with us again, Ryan. I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me. One last plea.
Do it.
If you're listening, sign up for Advocacy Day. Go register on resolve.org. Go to that events tab. Click on Advocacy Day. I promise you will make a difference. I promise that you're going to change the world if you join us on May 18th.
I love it so much. All right, folks, you heard it straight from the chair, the volunteer chair, co-chair. Okay, well, we'll give all the respect. The volunteer co-chair for Advocacy Day. All right, guys, thank you so much for being with us. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of IVF This. If you like what you've heard, click subscribe and follow to make sure you don't miss an episode. And if you want to learn more, head over to www.ivfthiscoaching.com to learn how to work together.